Hello, I'm Rachel Fairley and I work for Oracle, and I'm here with some amazing CMOs today. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, good morning. My name's Lucy Murphy and I am the CMO at Freshfields-BR.
Hi, I'm Mehul Kapadia and I'm the CMO for Tata Communications.
Hi, I'm Christoph Woermann. I head up marketing for Deutsche Bank's corporate bank division.
And I'm Katrina Lowes from Vodafone Business.
Amazing. So we are here today to talk about Gamechangers. So I'm going to start with, do you recognise the idea of a game changer? And can you describe the characteristics that for you would mean that you think to yourself, oh goodness, that is a total game changer?
Well, I would maybe start by saying you have to be a knowledgeable risk taker. What I mean by that is when you want to be a game changer in your industry, in particular in marketing, you have to have a deep understanding where the industry currently is and what the main topics are. And then you can build on that by adding some creative edges and being out there because you earned in the first place your credibility. So creativity for the sake of creativity leads to nothing. Creativity based on knowledge is a lot, and that can help you changing the game.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I also think that game changers are something that you can't go looking for. A bit like the Northern Lights. You can't go on a particular day looking to see the Northern Lights. You've got to be there at the time when they happen. So I think game changers we often observe with hindsight and then try to replicate what they did. Whereas if we go out setting out to be a game changer, then quite often I don't think we ever get to the results we're looking for.
Oh, that's so interesting. So do you think it's possible that people are game changers almost without realising?
I think so. I think there's lots of examples of that. And if you wrote a career or a job description that said characteristics game changer, I think you'd get 101 different people applying for the role, but you wouldn't be able to pinpoint that magic that happens.
Interesting. What are you thinking?
So I agree with that. I think when you see it, you know what it looks like.
How do you know?
I think they have real vision. They're amazing leaders, natural leaders, not people who try too hard. I think they're people who build trust very easily. I think trust is something that we're severely lacking within organisations these days. And I think it's trust that will make people follow you. And I think followership is a big thing. If people feel that they are a great leader, they've got a great vision, they've got a great strategy, they know how to implement it, and you trust them, you would follow them. And that's what I think great leaders do. They have this followership because people trust them. They're excited by what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I think in today's world it's something I don't see enough of. I think people are far more risk adverse in this environment than previously.
Why do you think that is?
I think people are scared of being fired.
Yeah.
I mean, I genuinely think that in a world where everything is over social, businesses are, looking at the Me Too. I just think it's too easy for businesses to fire you if your face doesn't fit.
But there lies the crux, because you're more likely to be fired if you maintain the status quo. So I would say as a characteristic of a game changer, he or she is completely non-hierarchical. Because what you said in building trust, being a natural leader, is somebody who's able to pick an idea, no matter where it comes from, work with this, because usually the ideas are not, you sit in an empty box room and you get an idea. It's the inspiration. And if you see someone or something happening and then you give them the platform to voice the idea, you can add your bit, and that makes you a game changer. Or you just listen and let someone else work and make them a game changer. And if you happen to be in charge of a team, by virtue of fostering other game changers, you and your entire team become one. So therefore, never operate with fear. That's the biggest killer of everything, including your job.
Absolutely. And in some sense, game changers are people who have a complete clarity of purpose, right? Clarity of purpose, clarity of, while one doesn't know the final destination, they know the reason why they want to reach there, right? So it's not how they will reach or what's the final destination, but what's the reason why, right? And I want to take an example of a leader who's not a business leader. Let's talk about Greta Thunberg, right? I think she's a game changer because there is very simple clarity of purpose, right? There is no necessary business outcome, but imagine the implication on business that is happening globally.
I just think the impact on the economy, if we see through what she's saying, could be absolutely amazing, right? I mean, this is whole new industries and whole new ways of thinking about what we do. It's phenomenal. Just coming back to something you said though, they're non-hierarchical. It's quite threatening for people who like hierarchy to have somebody who thinks non-hierarchically.
That's right, but hierarchies in organization are just organizational principles to deal with, regulation and other topics, but they are not something that instills productivity. They can be super counterproductive. So I'll go back to the point that I made in never be driven by fear. Life is constant learning, and the earlier you learn that you need to first of all find your own spot. Where are you particularly good at? And drop the fear that you can only do this in this one environment, say in financial service industry or in a legal environment. Say, I've got this unique set of talent, and if I let this shine through, it will be able to be deployed elsewhere. And that's why I think what Mehul just said is key. Singularity, focus on something, cutting through the clutter, finding out not only what you are destined to, but what's your company destined to, and hone into that. Then you can be a game changer.
You have to have a culture that allows for that though.
Yeah, you do.
You do, because I mean, you can have many game changers, but if you don't have the culture that empowers people to do that, then it's never going to happen.
And that's where the entire data flow and information flow comes in, right? I think to the point of hierarchy and the point of culture, because now information is so much more easily available across the organization, the kind of where hierarchy used to be able to control because others don't know and hence I'm able to manage, those levels are breaking. So now you could even have junior people understanding more about the business as senior people do, and hence the decision making can change. So actually I quite agree that hence game changers can make it happen now better than what they could do earlier, because they can reach out to a larger set of talent to help them in their vision, rather than just the hierarchy the way it used to flow.
And I think sometimes game changers are people that don't like to be told no. So the best thing you can do for a game changer is to say it's not possible. Because they will, something in them ignites and they find a way, or they find the people, or they find the way to cheat the process that's getting in there, and they find a way to do it. And it may not always be the best way to do it first time, but they ignite that movement behind them, like a Greta, or the culture of the organization. You find the people that if you've done it, then there's a group of people that will follow in behind you. So I think sometimes, if I look back at some of the things that either I've done or some of my teams have done, it's usually been a situation where somebody has said, can't be done. Do you know what? I appreciate it.
I'm so going to remember
challenge.
that.
And it's usually quite a patronising, can't be done.
Yeah.
And I think it's that hand up bit that really gets somebody going, you know what, I think there's a way, I think I can do it. And that's where I love the fact that it can run counterculture. It can be it can be a small thing. It doesn't always have to be a big thing. But recognizing when that happens and celebrating it, I think, again, as you mentioned, it's part of being a true leader, to recognize even the small game-changing moments, because they're not always the huge transformations.
It feels like one of the characteristics that I see in people who I think are game changers is a curiosity. Whether it's a curiosity to find the solution, or a curiosity to hunt out the people with the expertise, or a desire for kind of lifelong learning. What do I not know? How can I learn it? But they're always interested. In every conversation, it's almost like you see them kind of leaning forward and wanting to know more. And I think, so I was trying to think about what characteristics do you see regardless of whether the opportunity is there. I think that's definitely for me one of them.
That's a very good point, because they tend to be people who don't assume they know everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And hence they are more easily they reach out without an ego, without a barrier, because they are, as you said, curious. They want to know more.
I also think that in the whole discussion of game changers, we need a healthy balance between a game changer and a gamekeeper. Because when you have an organization that needs to be rejuvenated, yes, of course, you need to charter unknown territories, but you have to have the organization moving calm and composed in a certain direction that you have the liberty to change. And that sometimes in young organizations, you've got a burst of talent, but no direction, because you've got game changers and no gamekeepers. And that's why I fundamentally say, because our talents are multivaried, have everyone recognizing some people love to work on projects, some people like to be out there, find the right mix.
Yeah. Has this changed the last kind of decade? Do you think these characteristics are more at the fore? Or is this, when you look back on your careers, do you think it's always been there? How have things changed?
So actually there's been much more accelerated disruption now, right? And every decade I think sees it, and our decade will say it, and I think 10 years later somebody else will say that they've seen more. But because of that accelerated thing, you actually, to the point that Christopher made, you have to have that dual mode management, right? Are you able to manage some parts of your business which are probably going to be more profitable but will grow slower? Some parts of your business which look exciting, which will actually be your future businesses, but today don't deliver profitability. And that, I think, has just got accelerated a lot for companies now. And hence, more and more, if you can be the dual mode manager, right, and you can switch gears, is probably what, again, it goes to the thing about can you be a game changer then?
I was going to say, I think it is about, I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to finding the right talent, doesn't it? Because, you know, back to your analogy of, you know, is it in this part of the business or that part of the business? And they will move I mean, we have an innovation unit, we have our traditional business. And it is about, you know, finding people who've got the right skills, who have that curiosity, have that drive, imagination, who feel like it's their business. I mean, I think that's the key in our business, is to make everybody feel that it's their business. It's not the hierarchy, it's not the people who own the business. It's actually, we all should own the business. We should all have a responsibility for driving it forward. So I think the biggest challenge, certainly I see today, is attracting the right talent, keeping it, motivating it, empowering it, making sure that it's in the right role. And that, I think, is becoming the biggest challenge for leaders, because the hierarchy is dying, and so it should. But then how do you run a modern business or a modern workforce in a very traditional environment, which actually a lot of us come from? That is the challenge. You want to bring in new talent. You want to disrupt the status quo. You want people to challenge your thinking. You don't want people to come in and leave their brain at the front door. That is not what we want. But by the same token, we have very traditional businesses that need to be moved on. So you need people who are going to stick with you, people who are going to break those eggs, hopefully in the right way, and are going to get rewarded for it.
I also think that culturally we need to learn one thing that the Americans have always shown us over many generations, that we should actually embrace the fact that failure is the only way to learn. When a child learns to walk, falls down, pain teaches the child to walk. In our Western society, very often our notion is if you fail in your business, or you're persona non grata. Whilst in other countries, like, yes, you know how this didn't work, so you will never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
And if only as a corporate culture we can instill the guts to make mistakes. I work for an industry that has fallen flat on its face because it remained the status quo, and it got attacked left, right, and center by financial technology firms. And this industry, the banking industry, will come out of this phase much stronger, with better connections, with an open architecture, and that's because the culture changes. That failure is something to relish, not to fear.
So Do you think your culture is designed to disrupt and to reinvent?
Not yet.
But it's on a journey.
It's on a journey because as a human being, when you get taught how things work, and you were taught in a very old classic way, hierarchical way, it's very hard if you are 40, 50 plus to change, for some, not for everyone. Don't try to be generous. But now there comes a complete new generation in that has different ideas, has different work, life balance ideas, and we need to carefully move from this to the new environment. And the new environment will take also leaves out of the book of the old generation. So it's a healthy mix.
But see, it's interesting, right? When we grow up, we are taught, don't fix what is not broken.
That's
right?
so true.
Yeah. And now, if you just keep that approach, that is why people become more fearful of change. Because that is our key learning when we grow up, right? So how do we change that mindset is going to be fundamental.
So in your experiences in your career, do you think you've worked in cultures that are designed to disrupt and to reinvent?
So we've had to work in a culture where the industry has forced us to design and reinvent, right? Yeah. I think the pace of change over the last 2 decades in our industry has been so remarkable that if you don't do that, you can't survive.
You're in telecoms.
Yes.
Yeah, in the technology industry, I've had a whole long career of constantly reinventing. You know, every 9 to 12 months there's a new technology wave coming over the hill, and you've got to completely learn a whole new way of interacting, of how does this fit with everything else that's come with it. And so to a certain extent you get addicted to change. And I think in some cases, a game changer is pretty good at spotting when it's change for change's sake versus change for productive outcome.
Interesting. So that's like another characteristic, is that ability to sift.
Because you can get on a permanent change cycle and never actually learn anything. Now, one of the things that we're learning at the moment in Vodafone is how to make the best of agile working methods. And this is where small groups of people come together to fix a problem or to get a launch out of the door. They're empowered as a group to make decisions and not have to consult the hierarchy or the committees or all of that, you know, culture of meeting, death by meeting and PowerPoint. And in some cases, it can be too literal, because if you're not in one of these agile squads, then you can't change. But then there's some really great techniques. Fear of failure is one of them. Empowerment to make decisions and to be upheld for having made those decisions, as well as being able to pull in expertise when you need it. And that's forcing people to make decisions about contribution and prioritization. Because again, I think sometimes when you're in a large company in an industry that keeps inventing and bringing in lots of new technologies, your priority list gets as long as a scroll, because everybody's piece of technology is a priority. Yes. And some of these agile methods are particularly helping in our marketing organization. I think marketing's always been agile. We've always come together with a group of cross-functional people to either launch a campaign or launch a product or change an experience, and then we go away again and we regroup based on whatever comes next. So I think that was learning number one. We were more agile than we thought we were.
Yes.
But equally, what it has done is really forced people to say, if there's 30 things that everybody thinks are a top priority, how do we decide what the top 2 or 3 things are that we can focus on and really make a difference? Yeah. And that's where I think there is a real challenge for us right now, is that in a sort of a relatively flat market, in a troubled world, everybody's coming up with bright ideas. There's a big difference between a bright idea and a game changer.
Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely. How do they feel in professional services?
Tough, because I would say probably professional services, maybe I speak more for the legal industry, but it's one of the last subsectors of professional services to be attacked. Yes. And it is being attacked by technology firms, low-cost providers, and that's good, because actually that is forcing us to rethink our strategy, what we do, how we do it. I completely agree with your point, though. I mean, when you're getting disrupted and you don't have a clear strategy, there is that fear of, oh my God, let's just do everything. And if we're doing lots of things, that must mean we're making progress. And And so that's where your game changers and your real leaders, I think it's much easier to lead during a period of stability, when everything's going really well, the numbers are, fantastic, big tick, knocking it out of the park, great. You try leading when you are literally being fired at from every single direction. Yes. That is tough. And I don't know if we necessarily train our leaders, because we've had, up until the financial crisis, we had a really good run of businesses going global, big profits, shareholders taking home loads of money, blah, blah, blah. Workforces, companies getting massive, and now we're going through this period of, I guess, the world is fragmenting in a big way.
Yes.
And so leading now is different, which is why I think your purpose-led individuals, purpose-led businesses, I think those will be the businesses that win out.
Yeah.
So in legal, that's where we're trying to go, rather than try and dodge all the bullets. Let's just try and hold the bullets for a moment. Yeah. And really think about what is the long-term sustainable business model, and how do we get there in the most sensible way, but at speed. Because I think the other thing is that speed today is critical. If the longer you take to make decisions and the longer you take to execute, somebody else has already done it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I see two things that happen. One is that people react with what, I probably picked this up with somebody like Mark Ritson, but random acts of marketing. It's kind of like, just do it all and just hope something sticks. And there's
we call that spray and pray.
Spray and pray. That's
spray
exactly
and pray.
it, right?
Yeah. Going from 0 to 100 with nothing in the middle.
Yeah, and just hope.
And hope.
Just hope it's working. And then when you say, is it working? And they go, I don't know, I think so. There was a TV show called W1A, and they had a catchphrase in it, which I literally live by, which is, let's work out what we do well and do less of it better. And that is what I love that. But it's like quality, not quantity. Yes. Really, really figure out what's going to make the difference and do it. I know it's quite comedy phrase, but it is that sort of, don't panic. Don't panic. Like, regroup, rethink, get your head
focus on few things and doing them better. And,
yes.
And that actually, in my view, builds on what Lucy said earlier on. If you're in a technology business, basically the market expects you to innovate. So it's part of your core reason why you're in business. And now Lucy and I work for businesses that essentially sell trust.
Yes.
So legal and banking sell trust, and therefore when you have a game changer, the game changer has to observe that precious thing called trust is not rocked. That actually is built on by people saying, well, you innovate for the right reasons.
Yes.
And that's why we know as marketeers, our catchphrase is do more with less, of course.
Yeah.
But I think it's very healthy, because you know how it is. If a marketeer says, oh, I need more staff because we are all up to our eyeballs, and you give him 10 more staff, a year later would say, we are all up to our eyeballs. Because humans tend to, absorb stuff and therefore accommodate it that way.
Yeah.
So it's healthy to keep the pressure on the lid all the time.
And also to understand the consequences of decisions. I think people make decisions because they feel they're the right decisions, and they may very well be the right decisions. But at the same time, understand the consequences of making that decision. Because, too often, back to your point, you have these long list of projects, and how do you come up with the one or two that's really going to have the greatest impact? You've got to understand that if you are going to make big decisions about your business, and it might mean that parts of it, you divest it, which is what a lot of companies are doing right now, and focusing in on the core. What are the consequences of doing that? And I don't think we look at the consequences enough of decisions that are made.
Yeah. You was talking about that a little bit earlier, weren't you, Mehul? Because this idea that you may be incubating things that become your future business, but they don't make you money now. Yeah. So it's really about understanding where the market's going and what you're getting ahead on versus what is actually bringing in the revenue right now, right?
Absolutely. And also, I think, what's happening is all of us have got used to now in this digital age of instant gratification, right?
Yes, we have.
We want everything now,
yeah.
Right? And that, I think, is starting to impact business decisions as well. Are you able to, what's your cycle time that you look at, right? I want to give an example of the Tata Group where in 150 years of the group, it has had only 6 chairmen.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
And
Pretty incredible, no?
and of course it's changing now a little bit. The last two happened in the space of 6 years. But the thing is that if you can't have that vision to build for the next 25 years
Yeah.
or the next 50 years, right? And of course some industries you can't, you have to look at the next 3 and next 5, but you can't and shouldn't be living by the quarter, right?
Yeah.
And-
Short-termism, it's...
But you need the long and the short, don't you?
Yeah.
That's
You
the
need the
purpose.
That's the, yeah.
You definitely need the long. You need long plays that you can see coming out in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
But you need to make
And-
the quarter, make the year.
Absolutely, and that's where, do you see that quarter as part of that journey?
Yeah.
Or do you see that quarter as this current milestone and then I'll worry about the next one after that? Is where the difference lies.
So what's the difference with having game changers that have been in the business for a long time? Because if you've been around for a decade or 5 years, especially, thinking about CMOs, there was a very short turnover of CMOs, wasn't it, for a few years, and it's now got longer.
Yeah.
It's now more like 5 years, I think. Does that enable you to be more long term, even about your short term decisions?
Well, I would say, having been with Deutsche for 28 years.
I was going to ask you.
I-
Wowee.
Yes, and
Can't be old enough,
it's
right?
not for lack of alternatives. I actually think when you have an idea of what you want to achieve for your firm, and you really have a passion for the firm, that actually sets you up for a longer journey. And most of us, like me, haven't started off as marketeers. I started off as a proper banker and then moved into marketing. So I think nowadays, if you've got too much short-term vision, then your credibility absolutely suffers. Because if Lucy comes and says, "I've done this for 2 years and changed a bit," well, have you lived through the consequences of your initiatives?
Yeah.
And if you're longer somewhere, and the more experience you have and the more diversity you get in your team, your disadvantage that you have that inner view and not too much the outside view will be compensated by the talent that you recruit.
Is it hard to find good talent?
Nowadays, I would say no, because for me, the game-changing thing that I've done in my shop is that I didn't look at any marketeer profiles when recruiting new marketeers. So I've recruited journalists to start my content, to take this in-house. I looked at industry bodies where I got people, and I'd never looked at a classical marketeer. Because the fact is, if you want somebody to be innovative on social media, you need to get somebody maybe from the B2C side into your shop. You need somebody from a technology angle in your shop. And by that, because you've got that knowledge to tell them, this is how it works here, and please challenge me all the time because it shouldn't continue as it is. I think therefore the disadvantage for classical marketeers who going step by step, that they are missing out doing a sidestep, maybe working in the frontline business.
I think one of the things that I'm constantly challenging myself is, what do we now define as talent? So I think for a long time there's been a classical marketeer profile, as you say. That's rapidly changing now. And I think that, just as Christoph says, there are some amazing people that have come into our team that haven't got a classical marketing training.
Yeah.
They're a bit, you need to help them and coach them, because there are some skills that they need to get stronger in. But if they've got a really good instinct for how to use insight, how to not get caught up in charts and spreadsheets, but how to turn that into knowledge and action, then you can teach them some of the more classical marketing activities.
Yes.
And that's challenging, because while you're doing even just changing the interview process, not using that two people across a desk, if the elephant dies at the front of the parade, what do you do type problem solving stuff. It's finding new ways to figure out whether that individual is going to be a fit, whether they're going to get something out of it. I think, we've got an opportunity to look at how do we find the right people and change our own perceptions of what we think marketing talent is.
I think that's quite challenging for HR, isn't it?
It's challenging for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge also comes in of keeping people interested. Because see, after 3 dates or 4 dates, you decide to get somebody in, right? And there can be talent on both sides, but how you keep the interest and flame alive, right? And that's really what becomes important, especially because there is choice, right? People can, as you mentioned, get into different careers. They can move from marketing to something else, and from something else to something else. So how do you keep them core interested in what you do is becoming important.
And that was kind of the point I was alluding to earlier around, how you motivate your talent when it comes from many different places. We've tried to hire people from outside of our industry gradually so that the business gets used to having people who are not from the legal world. But I find the role of the CMO and its ability to be a game changer, I think that is getting more difficult, because in order to court the people that you are bringing in that's not used to your industry, they need a lot of courting. So I find myself spending more time on courting my team, travelling the world, making sure they're happy, that they've got objectives, that they feel empowered and motivated, getting praise. And that takes a lot of time to do it authentically. Yeah. I think then you've got to sit at the board and convince the board that they need to be looking long term, be more purpose-led. You've got to do a little bit of the work, because if your teams don't feel that you roll up your sleeves and get the job done, blah, 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 you have a family, you have friends,
a life,
a bit of exercise every now and again. And I just think that the role,
it's a lot,
it is a great deal for people to cope with, and for people to do it well. So you do have to, back to the individual and the role of the game changer. I think individually you have to be very comfortable with who you are and what you want to succeed at, and the bits that you will get a lot of personal gratification, satisfaction from. But you've also got to accept that there are some bits you're just not going to do very well, and be open and honest about that. There are some bits of my job I'm terrible at, but the good thing is that I tell people I'm terrible at it, and others help.
Hire for the skills that you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I read the book, The 100 Years Career, and that really inspired me, because it says as average life expectancy is getting longer, our whole attitude to our careers and our working life will have to change, because we're going to have to work longer, we're going to have to look out. As healthcare gets better, we're going to be much more productive for a longer age. And it suddenly made me realise that I've been a career marketeer. I've been passionate about marketing my whole life, and I still am. But working with individuals that have a sort of a passion window, where for a few years this is the thing that they're consumed by, and then their interest changes and they want to go and be consumed by something else. That's really helped me to think about marketeers that are going to be game changers in a season, and marketeers that are going to be game changers repetitively, because that's their long-term career expectation, versus the ones that want to come in and learn and do something and then move on to another career. And that takes two completely different types of motivation and coaching, and their curiosity is different. And learning how to manage that kind of mixture of individuals.
Having thought about the people and thought about how the people and the leadership aspect of Game Changers, what technologies have been helpful or instrumental in enabling game change? I think of agile as actually in a way as a kind of technology, because it's about it's a practice, it's a way of working. What other technologies do you think have been useful?
So for me, video conferencing, particularly with a global team, because you get a much better conversation and interaction if you can see each other versus the old audio conference.
Oh, it makes such a difference.
Particularly when you've got different cultures working on the same project, I tend to find that when you've got somebody going yes in their voice, but you can see their body language is going no, you can call that out there and then. And I think that a good game changer can use that to their advantage. You get much more commitment and input and passion and creativity when you can see each other, when we don't have that ability to physically bring them together and be in the same place.
And building on what you said, Katrina, one of the biggest game changers for me personally in being able to recruit the talent that I like is actually the capability to work from home. So now that the technology is so stable that people can really work from home without being interrupted and being properly connected, makes it much easier to say, wherever you live, if your commute is like 2 hours, who cares? Because you can work most of the time at home. And It's very often underestimated, super powerful, the flexibility to work when and where you want, as long as you get your job done.
I work from home most of the time from my home office on video conferencing pretty much all day, and everything you're saying speaks to me completely. Yeah, it makes a huge difference being able to see people. It's like, put your video on, I want to see your eyes, you know, I want to see you. What about you?
Yeah, I'll switch gears a little bit on this and say that, but it's connected to that, is that the more we can use technology to understand human behavior better, right? I think this example of video is actually to understand the human behavior of the person on the other side better. And I think that's where all these things about data and analytics and big data, which is happening, which helps us understand behavior of shopping. What do you do in terms of travel? What do you do in terms of your purchase cycles? Or what are you actually searching for?
Yeah.
I think that's really good. And that is what is actually enabling people. And we mentioned earlier, a lot of new ideas are coming up now, right? And that's coming up because people see the possibilities, right? No longer is technology seen as a barrier or only somebody can use. I don't need to understand technology to now actually leverage technology.
Yeah.
And that to me is a big change that has happened.
It creates more intimacy the more you understand the motivations and the needs of the people, doesn't it? Yeah. What are you thinking?
Well, it's hard going last, isn't it, when everybody
Oh, I'm
else
so
is given
sorry.
all the...
Okay, AI, blockchain, IoT, you know.
IoT. So I would probably say AI, and I'm only speaking from my sector, my business, but we had a lot of people doing very mundane jobs. And automation, like the scraping of data from a lot of our systems in order to deliver better data, better insights, has empowered people, and it's given people a real, it's almost like a new lease of life, to be frank. So you get people coming in and having, good data at their fingertips, allows them to do stuff with the insights that it's generating, whereas before they'd be coming in literally collecting data and putting it into spreadsheets. So I think we've revolutionised the junior level of our workforce by adding automation, AI.
So the expectation is to think from the beginning of your career rather than to process.
Yes.
It does change things, doesn't it? I
Absolutely.
think back
Yeah.
20 years ago to the beginning of my career, it was very manual.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Earlier that thing about Microsoft was, right, that when you enter into your career, you start with Word, then you get into Excel,
Yes.
then you get into PowerPoint,
Oh my God, you're describing my career.
and then you do only email. Right?
Oh, and somebody else does everything else for you. I love it. Yeah, I'd like to get to that too. It doesn't happen like that, though, does it?
But lawyers would have to look through, thousands of documents to find the risk that would sit in a transaction. Now technology does it for them and outdrops a report at the other end.
Quite astonishing.
It is quite astonishing how it's moved on. So I think anything that revolutionises people's jobs at the start of their career, as you say, I think is fantastic.
And I also think the IoT point, as marketeers, how we use technologies like IoT to give a better experience to our customers is completely new to many of the marketeers that have grown up learning how to do communication campaigns or how to build content. And this idea of turning objects into smart, intelligent, thinking things that make your life easier or better, all of a sudden you as a marketeer have to have a much better understanding of your customer than you've ever needed to have.
It's very personal, isn't it?
Very personal.
It's sort of B2B, B2P, B2Me kind of. I mean, it does come down to how the individual actually thinks and wants to interact and engage. Okay, so I'm going to put you all on the spot. We're going to do this quite fast. When was the last time you took a calculated risk? Can you think of a time where you have done something that has been game-changing, where it has felt like a calculated risk?
So you think calculated risk in our mind. Maybe somebody else thought it is not a calculated risk.
Well, you persuaded them it wasn't, right? You were thinking, oh my God, it's a calculated risk. But no, it's absolutely fine. Can you think of something?
Yeah, actually I can think of last year when we fundamentally changed the structure in our team in terms of marketing and said that we're not going to have a digital marketing function.
Why? Because digital is just part of what you do?
Because we said each one of you has to be a digital marketer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that became a tough thing, right? Because you always had somebody to lean on and blame somebody that person didn't do it well. but everybody has to understand, and that actually, as you can imagine, a transition for about 100 people to think that way was something to...
Yeah, that's okay. Yep. What about you?
So my example's not as good as yours, so apologies.
I bet it's great.
But it was actually something you said earlier where, you know, if somebody says to you, oh no, that's a silly idea, don't do it, you just think, okay. So we obviously, when we thought Brexit was going to happen on the 31st of October, I said to my partners, well, how about if we have a evening debate Brexit event on the 31st? And they were like, oh no, Lucy, it's half-term week. You know, it's Halloween, nobody will turn up, everybody's sick of listening and talking about Brexit, blah, blah, blah. We had 16 leaders from across business, politics, academia, like very powerful leaders, all talking about Brexit for 3 hours. First time this has ever happened, but we invited about 450 people, 400 turned up. Wow. You know, you never get 400 turn up.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant event. Just all over social media, best thing we've ever done, and the brand recognition that came off the back of that was fantastic. Everybody said it didn't feel like a Freshfields event, felt very different. But somebody did say to me, don't do it, silly idea. They didn't quite use the finger or the hand, but it was, don't do it.
I think for me, every day is a calculated risk, right? We have no certainty that anything we ask our organisations or our teams or even our customers to do will actually work the way we think it's going to. Because part of our role is to take that leap of faith, which says we're going to try it.
Yeah.
I think probably the recent one that I asked my sales teams to start seriously considering social selling.
Yes.
And the calculated risk was for my team and for them, because social selling implies the ability to continue a conversation once the person that you've shared the content with says, okay, tell me more. And that means that everybody has to go from having a mile wide and an inch deep level of knowledge to being able to go very deep very quickly with somebody who has a lot more expertise than you do. And we piloted it in one of our regional sales teams, and the results were great. And that then gave us some advocates who then went to some of the other cultures where it's not permissible to make that direct contact, where you need somebody to introduce you. But they're learning, and they're taking a risk, and they're doing it, and that for me was brilliant. But at the time, you know, when we launched it, I had a hunch it would work, but I didn't know whether our guys would fully adopt it or not. And we've got some great content makers of our own now. They're creating their own little videos and sending them to customers, and it's great to see, because we've sparked a whole set of imagination. Instead of, well, give me the content to put in front of my customers, they're now creating their own content, which is exciting.
It's glorious, isn't it?
For me, it was this January this year when I took a calculated risk and launched Trade Finance TV for the financial service industry, where I took the risk in saying, first of all, you launch a TV channel where people usually think, well, you have to produce something every day. We don't. We produce certain episodes. But the challenge was to invite the industry to speak, so that people understand Trade Finance TV is not a Deutsche Bank channel. It's a channel for the industry. And it's of course a gamble, because you sometimes feel that people are open, but then they're not that open when it comes to the crunch that they should contribute. But we've seen over the year that it has really taken on its own life, and more we get people asking us to contribute, which is great. So you know how this is when you get pregnant, you have to finish the pregnancy and then raise the child. So I do not know where the journey leads, but the fact was, get out there, do something that helps the industry, and be true to your words that you want to collaborate also openly for the benefit of clients.
Oh, I love that. So, toughest question for last. Oh. Yeah, okay, now you have to be very honest. Do you recognise yourself as a game changer?
I don't think I would ever announce myself as a game changer, but I do get a bit of a kick out of you can't do that. I do like to overcome the barrier and figure out a way to make it happen. So if that's the definition of game changer, then probably.
What about you, Lucy?
It's very hard to talk about yourself.
Oh, I
isn't
know. That's why it's the toughest
it?
question.
Yeah. So I would say if you were to ask this question of Freshfields, what would they say? So I'm not dodging your question. I'm just
Yeah, you are. Go on.
reframing it.
Yeah.
I would probably say the answer is yes. I have broken a lot of eggs at Freshfields. I wouldn't always say it in the right way, but I think I've always done it with the firm's best interests at heart. So I think they live with the eggs that have been broken badly, because I think some of the eggs that have been broken have actually moved the firm on. So I'd say that Freshfields would probably say yes.
Yes.
To pick on that, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Right? So I think
I'm a bit worried about you. You keep talking about courting.
I know, he's feeling very romantic.
He
You know.
is, yeah.
it just makes marketing very interesting for me. Goes back to the human basics, right? So I think to Lucy's point, it is clearly about, did the organization benefit out of it? Because at the end of the day, we exist in those roles to actually help the organization grow and prosper. And in that sense, I would feel that they would feel the same that way. I'm sure there are enough things that I've done which have been a problem as well, and which we've had to correct as well. But I think some of the things that I've done probably have helped.
Well, my job as a CMO, I see, is fostering careers of game changers. And if on the back of it, my team and myself are seen as game changers, I'm very pleased. But most of the big ideas in my team come from my team, not from me. I just
Recognize them.
Well, I enable them. The idea with Trade Finance TV was developed by somebody who's not a trade finance marketing professional in my team, and spoke up, brought it to my table, and I basically said, great, let's run with it. Of course, we did a due diligence, but therefore I think if you set your target to foster other careers, on the back of it, your career will sort itself out.
I think you're all amazing, honestly. I have so enjoyed this conversation. I think you are all game changers. I love the fact that I can persuade you. I thought if I asked at the beginning, you'd all say no, but if I asked at the end, you might recognize it in yourselves. But thank you so much for your time today and for sharing so openly. And it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you a little. And yes, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.